All right, so now we've covered communications to a scientific audience. We're going to switch gears, and we're going to cover communications to basically everybody else. So it's my absolute pleasure today to introduce to you Anja Samardzic and Maggie Sutherland. They are the two sole members of the comms department here. They have 2 positions open if anybody is interested. One position open, sorry, if anybody is interested. These ladies, I've had the pleasure of working with them for the last 4 months very closely. Thank you so much. They are in charge of making OTN look good, and they do it extremely well. I cannot emphasize how good these ladies are at their jobs. Everything that we've been able to pull off today has been because of them. And when I asked them to give this talk, I really said, I really want people to be aware that when we're talking as scientists, when we're talking to people who aren't scientists, we can't just rely on our science to make us look good, because not a lot of other people will be able to understand that, okay? So you really have to put a lot of effort into your presentation when you're talking to industry, when you're talking to government, when you're talking to just the general public. And so these ladies have all of that experience today, and they were a little nervous when I asked them to talk. They were saying, you know, maybe you should ask somebody who's more scientific. And I said, no. This is exactly what I want, because I have a feeling that it's not really on anybody else's brains. I had no idea. I had no idea that we had to actually work really hard to make this stuff look good and learn a new design program and stuff like that. And so they're just going to share a couple of words of wisdom today, and I really greatly appreciate you guys coming in today. So thank you very much.
No problem.
I can't say enough.
Are we just Okay, great. So good morning. My name is Anja Samardzic. I'm the communications manager for the Ocean Tracking Network. I have a background in international development studies and public relations, and OTN is the perfect place for me to merge my interest in oceans conservation with my skills and passion for communications and design.
Hi, I'm Maggie. I'm the communications coordinator with OTN. I have a BSc and MSc in geography, and I've worked for several conservation-focused charities, and I love working at OTN. I started here in the fall because I get to merge my scientific background with the creativity and communications and my passion for ocean conservation.
So as Kim mentioned, we're a 2-person team, and we're just going to talk to you today about the kind of communications that we do for the network in hopes that it will be of value to you when you're sharing your own research. So given that this is day 3 of the workshop, you likely know about OTN already, so we'll just dive into the communications aspect here. So given our global reach, we have a lot of different stakeholders that we work with and a lot of different deliverables and outputs for the network. And our main goal really is to develop, manage, and leverage activities and outputs that serve the strategic goals of OTN, and that includes working with internal personnel and also with our collaborators from local to global scales. So we have a lot of different deliverables, including but not limited to annual reports, government and facility tours, public outreach and engagement events like booths at the farmers market or movie screenings. We do media relations, digital and media marketing, sponsorship development, and as Kim has already mentioned, event planning.
So science communication is communicating science-related topics to stakeholders. It is disseminating this knowledge to bridge the gap between researchers and the stakeholders and really bring research studies and results into the public sphere. Stakeholders can include, but aren't limited to, government bodies, funding agencies, public institutions, media outlets, and the general public.
So there are many different types of science communication, and science communication really should engage and connect, and this can be done in a number of different ways. So it can be done through traditional communications like media and news coverage. This could be articles on the web or print, radio or TV appearances. You've got online and social media communications, which I'm sure most, if not all of you, already use. So websites, social media platforms such as Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And then other communications such as novel projects and campaigns that we'll talk to you about in a second. Presentations, outreach opportunities, reports, papers, pamphlets, panels, movie screenings, facility tours, and even field trips. So I want to start to talk about novel outreach opportunities because we've had the great fortune of having a few of them here at OTN. So one of our really cool novel outreach opportunities is the Tag Your It beer, which I'm sure a lot of you have tried. It's so we've been doing this project now for 4 years and running, and 50 cents from each can of this beer goes to oceans conservation initiatives in the Maritimes. So we've managed to connect with a lot of different local ENGOs who are doing some great work in the province, ranging from blue shark conservation to salmon conservation. And the beer is called Tag Your It, and that's because when Rick Mercer, pictured on the bottom here, went shark tagging with our executive director, Fred Wariski, his closing line was Tag Your It. So that's what we went with. And then we've also got, last year we had a really amazing opportunity to work with Mattel and National Geographic for the launch of their conservation Barbies. So they came out with a series of several dolls, including a marine polar biologist Barbie, and our scientific director, Sarah Iverson, was chosen as the mentor and the role model for this campaign. So there were a lot of different communications that came out of that, including a ton of media coverage, an amazing video for the Barbie YouTube channel, a field tagging trip, a blue shark tagging trip. And also Sarah was invited last year to the Halifax Chamber of Commerce Wonder Women Conference, where she talked about her work and about this campaign. And at the end of her talk, Oprah Winfrey style, they gave out 400 Barbies to all of the conference attendees. You get a Barbie, and you get a Barbie, and you get a Barbie. It was amazing. So even if you're not working on projects of this scale, you may be asked to participate in projects of this scale. So we've got Shannon up here demonstrating how lobster is tagged, and then we've got one of our field technicians, Nate, helping with the shark tagging. So always keep in mind that there are opportunities to think outside of the box and that you might get asked to participate in them.
So a significant portion of SciComm actually occurs online. 45% of the global population uses social media daily, and 90% of this is millennials who are active an average of 3 hours a day. So digital media can include web content, that's articles, blogs, video, or the use of social media channels. And using social media or your lab or institution's website to curate stories about the research you're doing and the people involved is a really great way to demonstrate your work. A couple examples here. This is a blog by an OTN researcher, Xavier Bordelot, highlighting his work on the Kerguelen Islands, and this was a series that appeared on the OTN's website and uses really accessible language, conversation style, really easy to read. So that's a great way to leverage your work, is to use your institution's channels to share that story. And then also we have a little clip here showing a Twitter contest with a funding agency. So this was a recent opportunity where researchers could submit a short video about their work, and that actually was a chance for them to enter this contest through that short video. They got to have a chance to win a trip to Ottawa actually through this. So it's always great to gather these clips together. You never know when you might be able to use them to share the story about your research. So why do science communication? We spoke a bit about it already, but it's really an opportunity to connect with the stakeholders via online platforms, to use tools like Twitter and Facebook to tag and inform various levels of government, industry, and academia, and also the public about the importance of your research. It really helps to build online communities for information sharing as well, and collaboration. So if you're starting from scratch on social, there's no need to do everything at once. You might start with a platform that appeals to you the most, see how that goes, and then expand from there or not. It's okay just to do one of these and choose that if it works best for you. So disseminating knowledge and research in an interactive way helps to facilitate this two-way dialogue. Sharing your information, you can respond to questions that are out there about your work, and also receive comments through digital platforms, and it's also a way to connect with reporters who use these channels frequently. Online science communications is also a way to capitalize on the direct linkages between stakeholders through organizing events or groups for information sharing. You can demonstrate these activities through private tours of your lab, perhaps, presentations, participating in various public outreach events. Science communication can also directly transfer academic research information and results to stakeholders through publications and articles, and also network activities. So it's really important to build a portfolio of science communications. This can be helpful in applying for grants, awards, and also training opportunities. If you haven't started already, it's a great time to begin tracking any media coverage that your research might obtain. Also, you can track the reach of your social posts. You can get this through any insights available through these platforms. And so by tracking all of these stats on media coverage and reach of your posts, it really helps to demonstrate the impact of your work, and this is something that you can roll into any funding application.
So why do online science communications or science communication writ large? And so Maggie discussed that, but how do you start doing that? Well, there are a couple of key factors to keep in mind. One is to know your audience. So always ask yourself, who is my audience and what do they already know about the topic at hand? Because this will really affect the kind of language that you use and how you center your communications. And also be really mindful of your language. You know, if people are new to what you're discussing, you might use animal tracking rather than telemetry, for example. Pull out some key messages. So as Rob mentioned earlier, what are the salient points of what you're trying to get across? Take those key messages from your abstract or your central thesis and pull them out and make them accessible. You know, put them front and center of what you're trying to say, because they're really the most important takeaways and the core of what you're trying to communicate. So is it easy to understand? Is it meaningful? Does it include the who, what, when, where, why, and how? And are there human and environmental implications to be mentioned when you're discussing this work? So, you know, ask yourself, why does my research matter, and how do I get that across to whoever might be reading it? This was just one example for you about how to center key messages. So it can be really complex to demonstrate what your organization or your institution does. And last year, OTN put together a 10-year report that summarized a decade worth of research and activities. And so we were asking ourselves, you know, how do we frame what we do in a really simple and accessible and interesting way? So we came up with Track, Connect, and Transform. And it says, together OTN and its collaborators are tracking oceans, connecting people, and transforming knowledge. So what do we want people to know? We want them to know that we track animals across the globe. We want them also to know that we connect people, resources, infrastructure on local to global scales. And that we're also transforming the data management paradigm as well as our understanding of the oceans and how we can best steward and manage them. So this is an example of taking some really complex concepts or large chunks of information and making them really succinct and easy to understand at a first glance. This was one example that I had pulled out in terms of just the use of language, because another big barrier to science communication is the type of language that you use. So take a couple of seconds to read these two pieces of text, which convey the same type of information in two very different ways. And so ask yourself, when you're developing your own materials, what is my material for? What's the publication? Who's the audience? And how do I ensure that my language is accessible and or appropriate to what I'm doing? So how do we overcome some of these barriers for effective science communication? Well, we can start by normalizing our research a little bit. You can use a funny anecdote like #fieldworkfail to tell a story or talk about why your work is interesting and use it to relate to your audience. So here I've pulled up two tweets from the Twitter archives. One is of our very own Rob Harcourt, and it says, 2 weeks on an uninhabited island, forgot the cutlery, #fieldworkfail, and he's actually eating dinner with a clamshell. And then we have another one here that says, just admiring my excellent camera placement. And as you can see, it's not so excellent. So it's really such a cool way to facilitate two-way dialogue about what's happening in the field and lessons learned. And that's a great way for researchers to share their work and also their innovations as well. Again, a huge one, know your audience. So for a general audience, just assume that the understanding of the language and the concepts are low. Try to look at it from a grade 8 level or lower, which is usually what media uses. So keep it short, keep it simple, keep it to the point. Lose the lingo, and remember that less is more. So try to keep it simple. The average person has a really short attention span and very little time. And so do you want your audience to understand what you're saying the moment that they read something? They shouldn't really have to do more than one read through, because you've already lost them if they need to read something more than once. You can also make your work visual. So a lot of people get their information from watching videos or looking at pictures. Consider making a short video or posting some pictures to create a photo gallery of what you're doing, because it really can draw people in. And we'll chat about that a little bit more.
Another mode of communications that we mentioned earlier is traditional media, and within this is working with media outlets, that's TV, radio, and print. So building a relationship with media contacts is a good starting point in changing the way that media understands and reports on your topic. Media influences the public and creating a feedback loop and overall public perception. So these headlines here that we've listed on the left show examples of when media clearly ran with the story, or when media outlets, reporters reached out to researchers or institutions and they developed the story together. Media coverage provides organizations with a direct link to the public to deliver information in a cost-effective way and a timely manner, because newsrooms operate in a very fast-paced environment. If you're concerned about commenting on a contentious issue, you can always get a head start by publishing your own story through your own channels, and then you can pitch this angle to reporters and work with them to develop the story how you would like. Keep in mind that traditional media outlets use social media a great deal to find stories, so be sure to use all the channels possible to get your message out there. Also, don't be intimidated to reach out to media about your story. They could be looking for something just like you have to cover. And if not, there's always a slow news day where they could fit it in. When reaching out to journalists, keep in mind that it's really important to email individuals, not just sending it to a general newsroom. And also the first sentence in your email should really be a pitch about why this story is relevant, why it's important to them, why they should cover it. They're not going to read beyond that first sentence, so if you start off that way, then have your full story below that. That's a great way to grab them. Also, follow up. They receive hundreds of emails a day. Just because they didn't respond doesn't necessarily mean they don't want to cover your story. It could have just gotten lost in the mountain of email. Visual communications are a really key component to effective science communication. This includes photos, graphs, tables, infographics like this one here. And these can all be used as social media graphics as well. These type of punchy illustrations can really demonstrate complex concepts in an engaging and very simplified way. So you can apply this to many different communications channels, like social media I mentioned, strategic reports. This could be part of a paper and used in an outreach event or a conference. The design of these pieces is really key. The fonts that you use, the colors, the layout, this is all really important to keeping it simple and conveying the message that you want. So when you're creating something for a particular project or a poster, keep in mind all of this. You want to choose a consistent layout and stick with that. As Kim kindly mentioned earlier, Anja and I helped out a bit with the design pieces for this workshop series, and you may have noticed that we chose a theme and we stuck with that in the conference schedule, on the website, and the in-between part to the live stream. So keeping that consistent theme really helps to relay your message.
So we don't have a lot of time left, but we'll leave you with some tips and tricks for good and easy hashtag SciComm. Again, know your audience, understand what they already know, and make sure that your language and your key messages are accessible. Less is more. I think in university we're taught that word count is really important, and we're always looking for more of it, but when you're looking at communications materials, you really want to make sure that what you're conveying is short and punchy and just straight to the point. Key messages, what are the core takeaways that you want people to know? The who, what, when, where, why. Why does it matter for science, and why does it matter for society? Keep those in mind when you develop your communications materials. Use visual aids. So there are a lot of amazing free stock photography websites like Unsplash, where we got this sea lion. Canva, it's a great software online to develop any type of design graphic that you need, and it's free and super easy to use. Get creative. So there are also free video editing tools that you can use, like Lumen 5 and Wave. They're amazing for taking your B-roll and your photos and doing really short clips for Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. And then lastly, connect with communicators. So if there are communications personnel at your institution, reach out to them and let them know about what you're doing, because they're always looking for a story, and they're always looking to share your research with the world. And the same goes with the media. I mean, they're always interested in knowing about what's happening, so it never hurts to reach out and pitch your work to them. So here's just a list of SciComm resources that you can use, and you'll be able to click on these links when you get the slideshows at the end of the workshop. And so there are tips and tricks for design software, good design, video editing, and media pitching. And that kind of concludes our presentation for today. So if you have any questions for us or any examples of how SciComm has worked for you, we'd love to hear from you. Otherwise, feel free to email us at any time if you have additional questions.